The stars looked dim from the viewing deck of the Federation Command Station. Admiral Nancy Wright stood with her hands clasped behind her back, watching the emergency transports flee toward the jump point. This was the third evacuation this month. Soon, there would be nowhere left to run. "Admiral, the Council is waiting," said her aide, a thin blue-skinned Navari whose antennae drooped with exhaustion. Nancy nodded and turned away from the viewport. The station's corridors were packed with refugees from the outer systems. Children of a dozen species huddled with their parents, their faces showing fear that crossed all biological differences. The Void Dominion had that effect on people. The council chamber was nearly empty now. Of the 50 seats representing the Galactic Federation's member worlds, only 12 remained filled. The others belonged to planets that had fallen to the void or been abandoned in desperate retreats. "Admiral Wright, your report, please," said High Counselor Zhen, his scaled face lined with worry. Nancy stepped to the central podium. "The Helios defense line has fallen. The Void Fleet bypassed our primary defenses using a new form of jump technology. We lost contact with the 3rd and 7th battle groups 6 hours ago." A murmur ran through the remaining counselors. An Eltaran representative pounded his gelatinous appendage on the table. "Then it is over. 300 years of war, and we have lost." "Not necessarily," said Nancy, bringing up a holographic display. "Our deep space monitoring station in Sector 87 has detected unusual activity from a previously uncontacted world." The display showed a blue-green planet circling an average yellow star. "This is Earth. Its dominant species call themselves humans. They are pre-jump civilization, but their technological growth rate is remarkable." The Council watched footage of human cities, vehicles, and primitive spacecraft. They have progressed from basic flight to landing on their moon in less than 70 years. Their weapons development is even more impressive. Nancy showed military footage from Earth. Tanks firing across deserts, fighter jets breaking sound barriers, submarines diving into ocean depths. "Most concerning is their adaptability in warfare," Nancy continued. "Most species develop a single approach to combat based on biological predispositions. Humans have created thousands of different fighting styles and military doctrines, constantly evolving their approach." "What good is this information?" asked the counselor. "They are primitives. They cannot help us against the void." Nancy zoomed in on footage of human soldiers training. "Look at their eyes, their movements. The void conquered us because they think faster, adapt quicker than any Federation species. But these humans, they have something different." She switched to footage of human sports competitions, emergency responders running into burning buildings, explorers climbing mountains in deadly conditions. Their risk assessment is unlike anything our psychologists have studied. They willingly face death for abstract concepts. And most importantly, they think in ways the Void's predictive algorithms might not understand. High Counselor Jen leaned forward. "You're suggesting we contact them, bring primitives into a galactic war. The Cultural Protection Act forbids." "The Cultural Protection Act won't matter if we're all dead," Nancy interrupted. "I'm suggesting this might be our final option." The chamber fell silent. Finally, an elderly counselor from the Batari Collective spoke. "My world fell last week. My family is gone. I have nothing left but to see the void defeated before I die. I vote we send an envoy to Earth." One by one, the other counselors agreed. Even those from worlds still untouched by war could see the end approaching. Their best scientists, their greatest warriors, their most advanced technology, none had been enough against the void. Nancy nodded grimly. "I'll prepare a first contact team immediately." As she left the chamber, she paused at the viewport again. Somewhere out there was a small blue planet whose inhabitants had no idea their galaxy was burning. A primitive world that might hold the key to saving what remained of civilization. "Let's hope they're as special as we think they are," she whispered to herself. "Or this really is the end." Captain Frank Miller yawned as he walked across the Johnson Space Center parking lot. It was early, the Houston sun barely rising, but Mission Control never slept. As flight director for the upcoming Mars mission, Frank had grown used to the long hours. His phone buzzed. Probably another delay with the oxygen systems, he thought. But the message wasn't from his team. It was an emergency alert from the government. All personnel report immediately. This is not a drill. Frank looked up at the sky, wondering what could have happened. Then he saw it. A silver shape hanging above the clouds, too big and too still to be an aircraft. His coffee cup slipped from his fingers. Within an hour, the center was packed with military officials and scientists. Satellite images showed the object clearly now, a ship nearly a mile long, unlike anything humans had built. It's positioning itself in geosynchronous orbit, said Dr. Linda Baker, head of astronomy. And it's sending a message on every frequency. The message played through the speakers in a voice that sounded almost human, but with strange inflections. People of Earth, we come as friends in dire need. We request permission to send representatives to speak with your leaders on a matter that concerns all sentient life. 2 days later, Frank sat in a conference room at the United Nations. As one of NASA's top officials, he'd been included in the hastily assembled first contact team. Across from him sat beings that looked nothing like humans. Ambassador Krell had blue skin that glowed faintly. His 4 eyes blinked independently as he explained the situation. The Galactic Federation has existed for 50,000 years. We have faced many challenges, but none like the Void Dominion. The alien displayed holographic images of worlds burning, strange ships destroying entire cities. They are a collective consciousness that seeks to absorb all life. For 3 centuries we have fought them. Now we are losing. Director Alan Peters of the United Space Command leaned forward. What does this have to do with Earth? We don't have the technology to fight these things. But you have something better, said Krell. Your species thinks differently. Your unpredictability, your creativity in crisis, your biological drive to survive at all costs. These are traits the Federation has lost over millennia of peace. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity was being asked to join an interstellar war they knew nothing about. You want soldiers, said Frank, understanding now. Krell's upper eyes blinked. We want partners. We can provide technology, but you must provide the strategic vision that might save us all. The Void will reach your world eventually, whether you help us or not. The next week passed in a blur of global conferences. World leaders argued, threatened, bargained. Military generals reviewed the Federation's technology with stunned expressions. Scientists examined alien materials that would revolutionize human understanding. Frank found himself appointed as liaison to the Federation's advance team. He stood on a beach in Florida, watching as more alien ships descended, these filled with engineers and scientists rather than diplomats. Do you think we can really help them? Asked Carol Jones, the NASA administrator who had become his right hand in this crisis. Frank watched the ships land, their hulls gleaming in the sunset. I don't know. But I do know humans have always been good at figuring things out when our backs are against the wall. We have 3 months, Carol said. That's how long before the Void notices us. 3 months to learn alien technology and prepare for war. Frank nodded. Then we better get started. Behind them, trucks were already arriving with equipment and personnel from every major military and space agency on Earth. Humanity was going to war among the stars, ready or not. Lieutenant Olivia Garcia had never expected to find herself inside an alien spaceship. Yet here she was, sitting in what the Federation called a neural interface chair, with strange lights pulsing around her head. Relax your mind, said the alien instructor, a tall being named Cell with skin like polished copper. The ship responds to thought patterns. Your species has unusually strong neural signals. Olivia closed her eyes. The chair hummed beneath her. Suddenly, she could feel the ship around her. Its engines, weapons, and sensors became extensions of her own body. This is incredible, she whispered. On the holographic display, The virtual Federation battleship she was controlling moved perfectly in sync with her thoughts. "You mastered in minutes what takes our pilots years to learn," said Cell, his voice containing what might have been awe. This confirms Admiral Wright's theory about humans. Across the converted aircraft hangar, more training sessions were underway. Navy SEALs practiced with energy weapons. Air Force pilots learned to fly small Federation scout ships. Engineers studied alien technology to find ways to combine it with human systems. In another section, Doug Williams hunched over a Federation pulse cannon. The former pickup truck mechanic from Oklahoma had shown a natural talent for understanding alien weapons. "Your power distribution is all wrong," he told the Federation engineer beside him. "You're losing 30% efficiency in these conduits." The alien, a jellyfish-like Medusan floating in a containment suit, rippled its tentacles in confusion. "The design is standard across all Federation ships." "Well, it's standard wrong," said Doug, grabbing tools and beginning to reconfigure the weapon. "On Earth, we'd call this a bottleneck. Let me show you how we'd fix it." 2 hours later, the modified cannon fired with 40% more power while using less energy. The Federation engineers recorded everything, amazed at the simple solution they'd overlooked for centuries. At the main command center established beneath Cheyenne Mountain, Frank Miller met with Admiral Wright and the human military leadership. "Progress report," said General Bill Ward of the Joint Chiefs. Frank pulled up the latest data. "We have 20 Federation ships being retrofitted with human design modifications. 3,000 soldiers and pilots have completed basic training on alien tech. The first Joint Human Federation battle group will be ready to deploy in 2 weeks." Admiral Wright nodded approvingly. "Faster than we hoped. But I have troubling news." She displayed a galactic map showing red markers spreading rapidly. "The Void has accelerated their offensive. They've destroyed 3 more Federation worlds in the past week." "Why the sudden rush?" asked Carol Jones. "They know about Earth," said Wright grimly. "Our intelligence indicates they've detected our ships here and understand what we're attempting." The room fell silent. Their 3-month window had just collapsed. "How long do we have?" Frank asked. "The Void Scout fleet has changed course toward your solar system. They'll arrive in 15 days. General Ward stood up. "Then we need to be ready in 14. New orders went out immediately. Training schedules doubled. Work on the ships continued around the clock. Across the world, more people were brought into the program as the secret of alien contact carefully expanded to include additional experts. Olivia found herself promoted to squadron leader, with 12 pilots under her command. Doug's modifications were being implemented across the entire fleet. Humanity was adapting to alien technology faster than anyone had thought possible. On the 13th day, Frank stood with Admiral Wright, watching the first joint battle group prepare to launch. The ships, a mix of Federation vessels and hastily converted Earth satellites, gleamed in the morning light. "Do you think we're ready?" he asked. Wright looked at the human crews boarding with determination on their faces. "No, but neither are they ready for you." Commander Kate Evans stood on the bridge of the USF Defiance. The ship had been a Federation cruiser until 2 weeks ago. Now it was the flagship of humanity's first space battle group, retrofitted with Earth weapons and crewed by a mix of humans and aliens. "Void ships detected at the edge of the system," reported her sensor officer, a young Navy lieutenant named Rick Porter. His hands moved confidently over alien controls that would have been unimaginable a month ago. "Battle stations," Kate ordered. Around her, the crew snapped into action. She felt a flutter of nerves but pushed it down. No one had ever trained for this kind of fight. The view screen showed 5 black ships approaching. They looked like giant spiders, with long legs extending from central bodies. "Federation records indicate these are Void Scout vessels," said Cell, who served as Kate's tactical advisor. "They will analyze our capabilities and report back to the main fleet." Kate nodded. "Then we need to show them something unexpected. Lieutenant Garcia, take your squadron out." From the launch bays, 12 small fighters emerged. Each carried a human pilot using neural interfaces to fly with unprecedented precision. Olivia Garcia led them in a formation no Federation pilot had ever attempted, an attack pattern based on Earth fighter combat. The Void uses mathematical models to predict enemy movements. Kate told her bridge crew, "Our job is to be unpredictable." The Void Scouts began firing energy beams that cut through space. 2 human fighters exploded instantly. Olivia's voice came over the comm, tense but controlled. "They're faster than in the simulations," switching to pattern Delta. Her remaining fighters broke formation, each flying in seemingly random directions. The Void weapons missed as their targeting systems failed to anticipate the chaotic movements. On the Defiance, Kate watched the battle unfold. "Bring us in closer. Prepare Doug's modified pulse cannons." The big ship moved forward, shields absorbing the first hits from the Void vessels. When they were in range, Kate gave the order, "Fire." The enhanced cannons released energy beams 40% more powerful than standard Federation weapons. 2 Void Scouts shattered under the impact. "They're adapting," warned Isel as the remaining enemy ships changed formation. "The Void Collective is analyzing our attack patterns." Kate had expected this. "Now, Mr. Porter." Rick activated the system Doug Williams had cobbled together from Earth satellite technology and alien power sources. It sent out electromagnetic pulses on frequencies the Federation had never used for warfare. The Void ships faltered, their systems temporarily confused by signals they couldn't classify as weapons or communications. "All fighters, attack pattern Omega," ordered Kate. Olivia led her squadron in a direct assault while the enemy was disoriented. Another Void ship exploded. The 4th managed to return fire, destroying 3 more human fighters, but ultimately fell to concentrated attacks from the Defiance. The 5th Void Scout turned and accelerated away. "Should we pursue?" asked Rick. Kate shook her head. "Let it go. Let it tell the others what happened here." When the battle ended, the bridge crew sat in stunned silence. They had lost 5 fighters and their pilots. The Defiance had taken damage to its lower decks, but they had destroyed 4 Void Scouts, something Federation ships hadn't achieved in equal numbers for decades. Admiral Wright's face appeared on the view screen from Earth Command. "Congratulations, Commander Evans. The Federation Council is impressed." "The Void will send more ships," Kate said. "And next time, they'll be ready for our tricks." Wright nodded. "Then we'll need new tricks. The data from this engagement shows that human unpredictability confuses their tactical systems. We need to develop that advantage further." Later, Kate visited the injured in the medical bay. One pilot looked up at her with a bandaged face, but managed a smile. "Did we win?" he asked. "We won the first round," Kate said, "but the real fight is just beginning." Across the ship, humans and aliens worked together, repairing damage and analyzing the battle data. For the first time in years, the Federation had hope. They had found an ally the Void couldn't predict. General Sam Johnson paced the war room beneath Cheyenne Mountain. The walls were covered with holographic displays showing Federation territory, Void movements, and battle plans. Officers from a dozen nations worked alongside alien representatives, all focused on the same goal: survival. "The victory at Neptune proves my theory," Sam said, addressing Admiral Wright and the combined military leadership. "The Void cannot efficiently counter human battle strategies because we don't follow the pure logic they expect." A Federation commander named Vex raised an appendage in objection. "With respect, General, one small victory against scout ships does not mean your species can defeat the main Void fleet." Sam nodded. "You're right, which is why we need to formalize what I'm calling the Terran Doctrine." He brought up a new display showing battle formations unlike anything the Federation had used before. Traditional space combat relies on mathematical precision. Ships maintain exact distances, fire at calculated intervals, and move in predictable patterns. Sam pointed to footage from human military history. Earth warfare evolved differently. We use feints, ambushes, and deliberate chaos. We sacrifice pieces to win the game. The alien representatives looked uncomfortable. Some of their translators struggled to convert military concepts that had no equivalent in their languages. "You propose intentional inefficiency," said Vex, his tone somewhere between confusion and horror. "I propose unpredictability," Sam corrected. "The Void's greatest strength is predicting your movements. So we give them something they can't predict." After 3 days of debate, the Federation Council reluctantly approved the Terran Doctrine. Human officers were assigned to every remaining Federation battle group. Training began to teach alien crews how to fight like humans, a concept many found difficult to grasp. In a laboratory on the other side of the base, scientist Diane Foster made her own breakthrough. For weeks, she had studied void communication patterns captured during the Neptune battle. "It's a quantum network," she explained to Frank Miller and Admiral Wright. "The void ships don't communicate with signals we can detect because they use quantum entanglement." Frank frowned. "I thought that was theoretical." "For us, yes, but they've mastered it." Diane brought up her data. However, during the Neptune battle, Commander Evans used an electromagnetic pulse system that briefly disrupted their coordination. "Like jamming radio signals?" asked Wright. "Similar, but working on quantum particles." Diane smiled. "And I think we can expand it. Earth military forces developed signal jamming during our Cold War. Those same principles might work against the Void's quantum network." Within days, Diane's team had created prototype quantum jammers based on modified Earth technology. Tests showed promising results. A jammer could disrupt void communications within a limited range. Meanwhile, reports from the front lines grew worse. 3 more Federation worlds fell to the Void advance. Refugees poured into remaining safe systems. The main Void fleet, numbering thousands of ships, continued its inexorable push toward Earth. Yet for the first time, Federation forces won small victories using the Terran Doctrine. Human unpredictability, combined with modified Federation technology, confused Void tactical systems enough to create small advantages. Admiral Wright stood with the Earth Leadership Council, reviewing the latest battle reports. "We're making progress, but not fast enough. The Void will reach Earth in 30 days at their current pace. Then we need to take the fight to them," said Sam. "A counteroffensive." Wright looked surprised. "The Federation has been on the defensive for 50 years. We don't have the ships for a major assault." "We don't need many ships," Sam replied. "We need the right ships in the right places, doing what the Void least expects." He outlined his plan, a daring strike called Operation Wildcard. It targeted not the Void's strongest points, but their communication infrastructure, the quantum network Diane had identified. "If we cut off their ability to coordinate," Sam explained, "we divide their forces, and divided, they can be defeated." The Council voted unanimously to approve the plan. Earth was going on the offensive. Captain Paul Bennett checked his gear one last time. The airlock would open in 30 seconds. Through the small window, he could see the massive Void communication hub floating in space, a black structure shaped like a giant spider web. "Remember, people," Paul said to his team of 20 Marines, "standard bullets won't work against Void soldiers. Use the pulse rifles." The Marines nodded. They wore Federation battle armor modified by Earth engineers and carried weapons that combined alien energy technology with human design principles. On their shoulders, each wore a quantum jammer developed by Diane Foster's team. "Operation Wildcard commencing in all sectors," said a voice over the comm. Across the Void front, 5 other human strike teams were preparing similar attacks on different communication hubs. The airlock opened. Paul led his team across the short gap of space to the Void structure. The hub was surprisingly undefended. The Void had never expected an attack on their communication system because the Federation had never thought to target it. Inside, they encountered their first Void soldiers, tall, black figures with too many limbs and faces that seemed to shift and change. The creatures moved with perfect coordination, like parts of a single organism. "Jammers on," Paul ordered. 20 quantum jammers activated at once. The effect was immediate. The Void soldiers froze momentarily, their movements becoming jerky and uncoordinated as their connection to the hive mind was disrupted. The Marines fired their pulse rifles. The Void soldiers fell, unable to mount an effective defense without their perfect coordination. Move to the central chamber, Paul ordered. Plant the charges exactly where the science team marked. They fought their way deeper into the structure. More Void defenders appeared, but without their normal coordination, they were no match for the human Marines. Paul noticed how they seemed to struggle to make decisions individually, having always relied on the collective mind. In the central chamber, Paul's tech specialist, Sergeant Joe Martinez, set to work. He attached specially designed disruptors to the quantum communication array, Earth technology modified to permanently damage the Void network. "Sir, we've got a problem," said Joe. "The system is adapting to our jammers. We've got maybe 5 minutes before they overcome the disruption." Paul nodded. "That's all we need. Plant the charges and prepare to withdraw." Across the galaxy, the other strike teams reported similar progress. Each communication hub was being systematically disabled by human forces using tactics the Void had never encountered. On the bridge of the USF Defiance, Commander Kate Evans watched the operation unfold. Her ship led a small fleet providing cover for the strike teams. "Void capital ships incoming," reported Rick Porter. "They figured out what we're doing." Kate smiled grimly. "Too late. Tell all strike teams they have 2 minutes to complete their mission and evacuate." Inside the hub, Paul's team finished setting their charges. "Fall back to the extraction point," he ordered. They fought their way back through corridors now filling with Void reinforcements. 2 Marines fell to enemy fire. Paul grabbed their tags as they passed, never leaving a comrade behind. 30 seconds to detonation," Joe reported as they reached the airlock. The team piled into their shuttle and detached from the Void structure. As they accelerated away, Paul watched through the viewport. Multiple explosions rippled across the communication hub. The structure didn't break apart dramatically. The damage was more subtle but far more devastating. The quantum network that allowed the Void to function as a single entity was being severed one node at a time. "All teams report mission success," Kate's voice announced over the fleet-wide channel. "The Void communication network is down across 3 sectors." Paul's shuttle docked with the Defiance as the fleet prepared to jump away from Void space. On the bridge, Admiral Wright's hologram appeared. "The reports are coming in," she said, with the first real smile Paul had seen on her face. "Void ships across the front are in disarray. Without central coordination, they're falling back to defensive positions." Paul looked at the tactical display showing Void forces in retreat. For the first time since the war began, the red tide was receding. "It's working," Kate said softly. "The Terran doctrine is working." "This is just the beginning," Wright replied. "Now we press the advantage." Admiral Nancy Wright stood on the bridge of the Federation flagship Guardian, studying the holographic display of the Void home system. After months of fighting, the combined human Federation forces had pushed the enemy back to their central command world. Now came the final push. "The Void fleet is massive," said General Sam Johnson, who had transferred to the Guardian for this operation. 5,000 ships protecting their home planet. Nancy nodded. "More than we expected. But they're disorganized without their full communication network." The success of Operation Wildcard had changed everything. With their quantum network damage, the Void could no longer function as a perfect hive mind. Their forces still communicated, but with delays and errors that created vulnerabilities. "Our fleet is in position," reported Frank Miller, now serving as Nancy's chief of staff. 2,000 ships, half of them equipped with human modifications. Sam looked at the display with narrowed eyes. "We're still outnumbered more than 2 to 1. Which is why we need Lieutenant Cooper's plan," Nancy said. Lieutenant Ryan Cooper had joined them from Earth's Tactical Analysis Division. At 28, he was younger than most officers at his level, but his understanding of Void psychology had proven invaluable. Ryan pointed to different sectors of the display. The void's central consciousness cannot process multiple simultaneous threats. It evolved to focus all attention on the most dangerous enemy, ignoring lesser threats until they become primary. Divide and conquer, Sam said with approval. It's a strategy humans have used since ancient times. Ryan nodded. We split our forces into 5 battle groups. 4 will launch feint attacks that look threatening but can quickly withdraw. The 5th, our strongest group, will remain hidden until the void commits to stopping one of the decoys. Nancy studied the plan. It was risky, spreading their forces thin against a superior enemy, but the alternative was a direct assault that would likely fail. We'll need a ground team as well, Ryan continued. While the space battle distracts their defenses, a small force can infiltrate the central consciousness facility on the planet's surface. I volunteer, said Major Lisa Clark, commander of the Special Forces team that had successfully destroyed 2 void communication hubs. Nancy approved the plan. For 3 days, the fleet prepared. Every ship was checked and double-checked. Combat teams rehearsed their roles. The most sensitive aspect, infiltrating the void central consciousness, was assigned to Lisa's team of human Special Forces operators. Remember, Ryan told the fleet commanders in their final briefing, the void thinks collectively. They cannot imagine sacrificing parts to save the whole. They cannot understand feints or diversions. These are human concepts we will use against them. The attack began at what Earth forces called 0 hour. The first battle group, led by Commander Kate Evans, jumped into the system and immediately launched fighters toward the void orbital defenses. The enemy responded as expected, sending a massive force to intercept. Just as the void committed, a second battle group appeared in a different sector. Then a third, then a fourth. Each looked like the main attack force, each requiring a response. From the Guardian, Nancy watched the void forces fragment, spreading thinner as they tried to counter each new threat. They're confused, said Sam with satisfaction. They can't determine which attack is real because all of them look real. Now, Nancy ordered. The 5th battle group, led by the Guardian itself, jumped directly to the weak point Ryan had identified, a gap in the void defenses created by their scattered response to the decoys. As the space battle intensified, Lisa's team slipped through in a stealth shuttle. They landed on the planet's surface, their ship's signature masked by the chaos above. Ground team is away, Frank reported. They have 6 hours to reach the central consciousness while we hold the void fleet's attention. Nancy nodded grimly. Everything depended on Lisa's team now. The battle in space was important, but ultimately a distraction. The real target was the mind that controlled the entire void dominion. All ships, engage, she ordered. Keep their attention off that planet at all costs. The largest space battle in galactic history erupted around them. Human ingenuity and Federation technology against the might of a civilization that had nearly conquered the galaxy. Everything would be decided in the next 6 hours. Major Lisa Clark moved silently through the dark corridors of the Void Central facility. Her team of 8 Special Forces operators followed closely, their modified Federation armor allowing them to avoid detection by most sensors. 200 meters to the central chamber, whispered Sergeant Ben Adams. Checking the map Diane Foster's science team had pieced together from Federation intelligence. Above them, the space battle rage. Occasionally, the facility shook as defensive weapons fired or incoming attacks struck nearby. The diversion was working. Most Void defenders had been called away to fight the human Federation fleet. Contact ahead, warned Corporal Amy Wilson, her scanner showing Void signatures approaching. Lisa signaled the team to take cover. 3 Void guards passed by, their movements showing signs of confusion. Without the full quantum network, they were struggling to coordinate. The central consciousness must be feeling the pressure. Lisa said after the guards passed, "Let's move." They reached a massive door blocking access to the central chamber. Ben attached a device Doug Williams had created specifically for this mission, a hybrid of Earth explosives and Federation energy tech. Breach in 3, 2, 1. The door disintegrated. The team rushed in, weapons ready. The central chamber was unlike anything they had expected. In the middle floated a massive crystalline structure pulsing with dark energy. Around it, dozens of void creatures worked at control stations. "That's it, the void central consciousness," said Lisa. "Plant the disruptors according to plan." As her team spread out, void defenders responded. Energy weapons fired across the chamber. 2 human operators fell immediately. Lisa returned fire with her pulse rifle, taking down 3 void creatures. "Hurry," she called to Ben, who was setting up Diane's quantum disruptor device directly beneath the crystal structure. 30 seconds, he replied. Lisa and the remaining team members formed a defensive perimeter, holding back waves of void defenders. Another operator went down, and another. "Device armed," Ben called. 10 seconds to activation. A final wave of defenders surged forward. Lisa felt a burning pain as an energy beam grazed her arm. She kept firing, determined to hold just a few seconds longer. "Now," Ben shouted. The disruptor activated. The crystal structure above them pulsed erratically, its dark energy flickering. Throughout the chamber, void creatures dropped to the floor, writhing as their connection to the central mind was severed. "Fall back to extraction point," Lisa ordered. The survivors grabbed their wounded and retreated from the chamber. In orbit above, Admiral Wright watched the tactical display on the Guardian's bridge. Suddenly, void ships across the battlefield began to drift or move erratically. "What's happening?" asked Frank Miller. Sam Johnson grinned. They did it. The ground team reached the central consciousness. Throughout the void fleet, ships lost coordination. Some continued fighting while others began to retreat. Without central direction, the once perfect hive mind fell into chaos. "All ships press the advantage," Nancy ordered, "but offer surrender to any void vessel that stands down." The battle turned quickly. Within hours, large sections of the void fleet had either retreated or surrendered. The few that continued fighting were quickly overwhelmed by the coordinated human Federation forces. Lisa's team made it back to their shuttle, carrying their wounded and fallen comrades. As they lifted off from the void world, they watched Federation ships landing to secure the central facility. 3 days later, representatives from the remaining Void Collective signed a formal surrender aboard the Guardian. With their central consciousness damaged beyond repair, the hive mind that had threatened the galaxy for centuries had fragmented into smaller, manageable groups. In the months that followed, reconstruction began across former Federation worlds. Captain Frank Miller became the first human ambassador to the reformed Galactic Council. Scientists from a dozen species studied Earth culture, both fascinated and terrified by the species that had turned the tide of a losing war. 1 year after the victory, Admiral Wright stood with General Johnson on the observation deck of the new Federation headquarters, built in orbit around Earth. "Reports from deep space telescopes show other galaxies have taken notice of humanity," Nancy said. "Some are debating whether to establish contact." Sam smiled. "Let them come, or let them stay away. Either way, the galaxy knows now what happens when you cornered humans." Nancy looked out at the stars, where ships from 100 worlds now traveled safely. "They thought it was all over," she said quietly, "until humans came."